Hello, I'm Stacey Landry, Director of Gift Planning and Advisor Relations at ECCF, and I'm happy to welcome you to the very first episode of a new series we are calling Making Connections. Today, our episode is called Planning for Giving, Now and Later, and I'm so excited that our very first conversation is with Bob Goldman. Bob is a trust and estate planning attorney. He's the managing partner of Bob Goldman Law in Salem, and he is currently the secretary of ECCF's Board of Trustees. So Bob, thank you so very much for joining us. Why don't you start by sharing a little bit more about who you are?
Thanks, Stacey. I'm very excited to be doing this with you today. I have been practicing trust and estates law for 34 years, primarily at big law firms. But 8 years ago, I left my large Boston firm and opened up a shop here in downtown Salem. And one of the first things I did was call up Essex County Community Foundation to join your professional advisory committee. I had done that at the Boston Foundation and knew it existed and knew it was a great way to start to get to know what's going on in the scene here in Essex County and the North Shore. I'm a member of ACTEC, the American College of Trust and Estate Council, and active on their charitable planning committee. And in my own communities of Lynn and Salem, I'm active these days with Haven Project, which is an amazing group that supports unaccompanied youth, and with NAGLI, which is the North Shore Alliance for GLBTQ youth, based in Salem and serving all of Essex County.
Can you share some examples of how you bring the idea of giving into this planning conversation for now and for later as well?
Sure. Well, I have to say that the theme here of now and later is really the overarching theme of all of estate planning. We often start with the later. Clients are coming because they want to deal with getting their affairs in order in advance of their death. And so we're doing everything about later. But I think most advisors know that the whole game is moving past all of that planning and backing up in time to now. Charitably, as we've discussed many times, if clients donate now, they get an income tax deduction. At their deaths, there may be an estate tax deduction, but there's no one gets an income tax deduction when you leave at death. And that's why so often, if clients are putting in bequests at death, I encourage them to add language to the point that I bequeath so much to this charity at death, reduced by what I may give during my life, or what I may give and indicate in writing is an advance of the bequest. That way they can get an income tax deduction by doing it sooner, and they don't have to redo their will to get rid of the bequest or to change the amount of the bequest. So I do talk to clients about giving to charity now. The number one thing I hear from clients when I start talking about charitable giving is, I didn't know I could do that. No one ever told me I can do that. And they're saying it with excitement. They're basically thanking me and grateful to me because I just shared with them a couple of ideas of what they can do with philanthropy now that they're very intrigued by. They're intrigued because they want to do more and be part of their communities. They want to do more than just necessarily write a check like they've always done.
So I wonder if, as a tool, a donor advised fund has been something that you've used with your clients in this conversation of giving now and giving later.
Yeah, I have a confession to make to all the listeners out there. You already know this, Stacey, and that is that after 25 years of regularly talking about donor advised funds, I never had one for myself until earlier this year in January. It's unbelievable to me that I never called up Essex County Community Foundation and opened one up before. So I've done it now, and it really already changes the kind of conversation I'm having with clients. But to quickly move through some of the conversations I've had about donor advised funds or DAFs for years. First, it is a great substitute for a family foundation, which itself is really a nice vehicle to bring your family together and do some philanthropy together. The Thanksgiving table really could be, in part, a scheduled conversation about who's doing what, volunteering where, making a difference how, and a conversation about where the family's foundation or donor advised fund should be making grants this year. And it's a statement that is a way to convey values and a legacy, at least as much as the legacy of money that we're talking about in our meetings. So that's a great use of a donor advised fund. A way to, every client I know with large investment portfolios that get churned in their sales all the time should have a donor advised fund, so the broker can just, a wealth advisor can just, instead of selling, slide the stock that's going to be sold or trimmed over to the donor advised fund and sell there. No capital gains tax, and you're pre-funding your philanthropy for the year or for next year. That's how the funds work. Another common use of a donor advised fund is pre-funding your philanthropy if this is the year where you're going to have a larger tax. You're selling something, you're going to have gains. You can use more charitable deduction this year, but sometimes it's more than you really are used to or want to or are ready to give to your favorite charities in 1 year.
Right.
Give it to the donor advised fund, get your deduction this year, advise it out to your favorite charities over future years. And I think I, of course, want to mention how I regularly use donor advised funds with IRAs and qualified retirement plans. I have a lot of clients in the wealth level where they think they'd like to do something for charity at their deaths, but they worry, what if my kids need the money? Right. I don't know how much I'm going to have at my death. And I get it that if I leave it to them, there might be estate tax, but I think they might need it, or I don't know if they need it. I regularly have them, at least with their IRAs and qualified retirement plans. Those assets come loaded with income tax liability at your death. Your kids don't get to skip the income tax just because you died. And they're exposed to the Massachusetts estate tax. And of course, if it exists, if it's relevant to this client, a federal estate tax. Just designate your children as the beneficiary of the IRA or the retirement plan, but say to the extent that a child disclaims or waives, it's passing to a donor advised fund to be controlled by the child.
Love it.
That way, child number one might well decide to keep their IRA, the IRA they're inheriting from you, and suffer all those taxes, and they'll have what's left over. Great for him or her. But another child might say, you know, after all those taxes, what's left over isn't as important to me. I'll let 100% of this, my share of mom's IRA, go to a donor advised fund, and I'll have all those dollars there to fund. One little hint, it's very hard to set that all up in the little beneficiary designation form provided. I just designate the client's trust and all of these instructions that it goes to separately to children, that those who disclaim, it moves to a donor advised fund to be established by the trustee. All of that's in the trust, and the IRA operators and administrators of the world appreciate that they're not looking at all that fine stuff that they can't deal with.
Right. I wonder, you know, how is your own commitment to philanthropy and your willingness to have those conversations with your client, how has that deepened or strengthened the relationships that you have with your clients?
Oh my gosh. I mean, in our business, it is so intimate to begin with. And because I'm involved in my community, it just comes up. It's substantive, not to show off. It comes up all the time. Even just my involvement in ECCF. Well, here's a great one for advisors out there. ECCF runs meet and greets where for investment of 2.5 hours, you get to see 3 to 4 charities in a community and learn about what's going on. I've been to the ones that ECCF ran in Lynn, Salem, Peabody. And then next day, a client comes in from the community, and I start talking about ECCF and what I just saw, and how I now, especially that I have a donor advised fund, how I can use that fund. As far as defining me, Stacey, you helped me set up my donor advised fund and think through any purposes and values I wanted to express through it. And I decided, I'd never done this before, that this donor advised fund is going to be how I fund gifts right in my community where I live of Lynn. And it opened the door for me to just go do all the Lynn giving I wanted to, especially now, during times when everybody's fundraisers were canceled and everybody needs money.
Right.
And I talked to my clients about it. ECCF sends me alerts that there was an explosion, a gas explosion in Andover and Lawrence, or that there's a new Essex County COVID fund. And these are reasons that I take that and I forward it to all my clients and all my referral sources. I'm defining myself in my workspace as somebody who cares. They can delete it if they aren't interested, but guess what? When the explosions happened, and the next day, while everyone in Massachusetts is trying to figure out how they can help, and Essex County had a pre-existing fund to help the Merrimack Valley and converted it into a fund, I sent the email. Over 40 clients responded with, "Thank you, Bob."
Wow.
Thanking me for having just let them know a quality way for them to respond to local needs. Clients really do want. I know. In 34 years of knowing this, I can tell you that clients want advisors, whether it's wealth advisor, accountant, trust and estates lawyer, who share their values.
Great, that's wonderful. And you're leading into really the way that I'd love to wrap up this conversation. And I know you've shared already so many pieces of advice, but if you could even just bundle one idea, one piece of advice that you would pass along to the professional advisors who are watching this right now, what would that be?
Oh gosh, I may have already said it. And guess what? It's not a tax tip.
Yeah.
So I think about the fact that when I was younger and, having kids and trying to make partner at my big Boston firm like everyone else, I was involved in my community. It just made sense. It's what my parents always did. It's what I did. And everyone was saying to me, "What are you doing? How do you have time for that?" Their great plan was to do it later.
Right.
I kept thinking, okay, later when?
Yeah.
How is this world going to function if everyone waits till later? Do it now. Get involved in a minimal way, in a medium way, in a maximum way. I just think as a professional, you have talent, bring it out there, and do it where you're passionate about it. It doesn't work. Trust me, I've tried it the bad way, sitting on a board of a nonprofit I didn't care about. It's painful. Do it whether you're visiting the charity, donating, bringing a client with you to see a charity. Oh my God, that's done really well. Do it now. Well, if this fits, we're closing with the now.
Do it now.
I didn't even see the connection until just now. Don't wait till later. Do it now.
Do it now. Some things you do now. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bob. I mean, a huge thank you for your time, for sharing so generously your experience and your expertise. Thank you to everyone who's watching this for joining us. There will be more conversations like this coming really soon. And in the meantime, please reach out to discuss how we can support you, how we can support your clients. And we really look forward to working together. So thank you all very much and have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.